officers in attendance. We have Mr. Lau Wing-Gay, Deputy District Commander of Airport District, and then Mr. Li Gangbiu, Acting Senior Superintendent of Traffic, New Territories South, and then Mr. Kwok Chen Kit, Acting Assistant District Commander Operations of Central District. I want to say that for today's press conference, we'll mainly be talking about the activities to be held over the weekend. If you've got other questions, you may raise them at our press briefing or the press briefing after this one or at future ones. Thank you for coming to today's press conference. I would like to talk about the activities over the weekend as well as the police response. First of all, I will talk about the airport as well as our work on Saturday. Mr. Lee will talk about the traffic arrangements at the airport on Saturday, and then Mr. Kwok will talk about the public event in the Central on Sunday. Before I start, I would like to talk about a case happening to the MTR jeopardizing passenger safety. At about 5 a.m. this morning, a maintenance train of the MTR carried out maintenance along the East Rail line. The work was completed. It was on its way back to the depot. And then the station master saw that on the overhead power line between the University Station and Fulton Station, there was a bicycle hanging on the overhead power line. And on the track, there were a number of articles like bicycles and railings. I've prepared a video clip for you. Please take a look. The MTR staff members had to spend a lot of time to remove the miscellaneous items and confirmed the rail safety. As a result, East Rail service was interrupted. Such destructive action or behavior jeopardized the operation of the train service, and it is also causing a lot of risk to the passengers. The MTRCL pointed out that the miscellaneous items may cause the trains to break down, and for the bicycle hanging on the overhead power line, if no one discovered it, the cable may break when the train passed that section, and it would affect the operation of the trains. For the items on the track, they may cause a high speed or a train traveling at a high speed to derail, and it will be serious. We have noticed that for the damage caused to the MTR service, in addition to damaging the facilities in the stations, they have also started to damage the rails, the rail tracks, the cables, etc. They will jeopardize the operation, and it may also cause major catastrophe and causing injuries. We'll take follow-up investigation. And then I would also like to talk about the airport. And in fact, we've noticed that there were online calls to ask people to do the following on the coming Saturday. That is, make use of different means of transport to paralyze the Hong Kong International Airport. Members of the public were asked to patronize the airport railway, the airport bus, and drive their own vehicles, the private vehicles, to make different trips and frequent trips to and from the airport so as to paralyze the normal traffic and operation of the airport. You can see that for a period of time, radical protesters have been ignoring the court injunction order, and they were paralyzing the traffic, affecting the operation of the international airport. What is even worse is that some radical protesters had obstructed the international visitors and the ordinary citizens. Ordinary citizens were also unlawfully detained, and people took the law into their own hands. We can see that on the 13th of August, protesters at the airport deliberately obstructed the citizens, the travelers from taking the planes to leave Hong Kong, and they use the trolleys to blockade the place, like putting them on the escalators and the lift, and they sat in the departure hall. No one was allowed to go to the departure gates. Many people, as well as travelers from different places, were not able to go into the airside to board a plane, and they can't make their journeys and they can't go home. Some violent protesters had detained the mainland travelers as well as reporters. Using cable ties to tie them up, they took the law into their own hands, punched them, kicked them, and they prevented the ombudsman from providing medical service, jeopardizing the safety of others. And they have been attacking police officers, and we feel that our lives have been seriously threatened. And they had to draw the gun, and we take the matters seriously. As well as to the cases, on the 13th of August, so far we've arrested 11 males and one woman, aged between 17 and 35. Between the 13th and the 14th of August, at the IA, at different hours, they committed a number of offences: unlawful assembly, unlawful detention, riot, and all disorderly conduct in a public place, assaulting police officers, wounding, offensive weapons, AOA breach. As to the public event on the 1st of September, so far 6 were arrested, aged between 20 and 26, 5 males and 1 woman. They were involved in possessing equipment for unlawful offences, and by throwing objects onto the rail, they jeopardized the safety of passengers. On the 1st of September, the protesters did not stop the violence. It was large scale as far as the disruption was concerned, and the traffic was disrupted and many MTR stations were vandalized. Starting from noon, a large number of protesters started to assemble outside the terminal of the airport. They also went to the roads nearby using barriers as well as airport trolleys and rubbish bins. They set up roadblocks and they blockade the roads unlawfully. Some of the drivers were most irresponsible, and they drove slowly and they paralyzed the traffic. You can see that a large number of travelers, as a result of such irresponsible acts, could only resort to the following. That is, they had to pull their suitcases to walk on foot from Tung Chung to the airport. To the travelers, to citizens and other road users, their safety has been much jeopardized. Later on, protesters also threw bricks and metal poles at the trains and rail tracks of the Airport Express. They even went into the track area, and the train service was brought to a halt. You can imagine that had there been a train passing, the consequence could have been very serious. We must emphasize once again that on the 24th of August, the airport authority had the injunction order extended. There's no time limit, and in fact the airport has already introduced entry and exit controls. The injunction order covered the entire airport island. Even if you deliberately blockade the airport or the roads nearby, it would be a possible case of contempt of court. If anybody unlawfully or willfully obstruct or interfere with the proper use of the airport, or if you incite or help others to do this, that is to do anything against the injunction order, you may be liable to contempt of court. Now, you have to show a valid boarding pass for you to go into the passenger terminal. And for those seeing their family members or friends, they usually cannot gain entry unless for special reasons. There are calls to ask people to use forged boarding pass or electronic air tickets to gain entry. I have to emphasize that it is a matter of using a forged document. The maximum penalty would be 14 years imprisonment.
And we will be watching the actual situation and strategically arrange manpower. We have been in contact with the stakeholders and other government departments in order to make flexible arrangements. We expect that there would be serious congestion of traffic around the airport tomorrow, we appeal to the public to leave enough time to go to the airport and also complete immigration clearance procedures. Members of the public should also pay attention to the latest traffic and air flight messages. And there may be updating and differences in the messages issued. Now I will pass to Mr. Lee of the Traffic New Territories South to let you know about the arrangements tomorrow. We are the traffic division, and our main duty is to maintain the safe and smooth operation of Hong Kong roads. We are very concerned that some people are advocating that on the airport there would be disruption to the roads around the airport. This will not only affect the right of the citizens to use the roads, it will also endanger people who use the roads. According to our observation in this past period, some motorists deliberately disrupted traffic. That kind of behavior was extremely irresponsible. For example, some drivers would deliberately drive slowly on busy roads so that vehicles had to queue up. By doing so, they might commit the offenses of careless driving. According to the Road Traffic Ordinance, the highest penalty could be imprisonment of 6 months and also a fine of $5,000. And they might even be guilty of dangerous driving. With regard to dangerous driving, the highest sentence can be 3 years and a fine of $25,000. And there was someone who made a false report to the police saying that there was a traffic accident. By doing so, according to the police force ordinance, this person might have committed the offense of misleading a police officer, attracting an imprisonment of 6 months and a fine of $1,000. And he might also be guilty of wasteful employment of the police. According to the Criminal Procedures Ordinance, the highest penalty could be imprisonment of 6 months and a fine of $2,000. The police appeal to the public to pay close attention to the traffic situation tomorrow, and the members of the public should tune into broadcasts on the radio and leave enough time to go to the airport. And also, members of the public can make advanced choice of their public transport choices, like using a bus, a taxi, or the airport express rail in order to go to the airport. You can also take the ferry. We will do our very best to maintain smooth operation of the roads. We have already put aside enough tow vehicles. If there is any vehicle which deliberately stop for no reason on a highway or a road so that the road is congested and disrupted and so that road safety is affected, we will take swift action and use our powers accorded to us by the law to take appropriate action, including towing away the relevant vehicle. If the vehicle has been converted in any way, and if it is not within the specifications of the law, the police would again act according to Hong Kong laws, impound the relevant vehicle for examination. I must emphasize that if anyone breaks the law and blocks the road illegally or even resort to violent action, we will resolutely enforce the law. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Kwok to talk about our preparations for the public event in Central. Good afternoon. I will now give you a briefing on a public activity to be held in Central over the weekend. We are aware that on the internet, someone is proposing that on the 8th of September, that is this Sunday, there should be a public rally and a march at the Chater Garden in Central. It has been brewing on the internet for some time and has been discussed, but we have only received a proper application this noon. And it is said that there would be a public rally and a march in the afternoon of Sunday, and it is going to be from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., and it will be from Chater Garden and then to Garden Road and Lower Albert Road. It is said that 5,000 people are expected to take part. The police is now having close liaison with the organizer. We will do our risk assessment according to established procedures, and then we'll consider whether to issue a letter of no objection. We will send appropriate manpower in order to do crowd control to make sure that the activity will be conducted in a safe and orderly manner. Now I will give the floor to Mr. Lau to make a conclusion. The Hong Kong International Airport is an aviation hub internationally and also in the region. It is used by 200,000 people trips every day, and over 1,000 flights take off and land in the airport every day. We must remind the public that the injunction order for the airport is still in force. Anyone going into the boundary of the airport to protest, or if people interfere with the proper use of the airport, even if there is no violent clash, you may still be violating the injunction order. In this past period, we are aware that during protests, very often the people would concentrate at one place, but then they will disperse to other places. Just like the 1st of September, a large group of protesters gathered in the airport, but then they dispersed to Tung Chung in order to make damages. Some of them actually extensively damaged facilities within the MTR station, affecting the Tung Chung station and other MTR stations. I hope members of the public will pause and think. Please stop making illegal acts and acts that flout the injunction order so that we can again have order in society.
I'll recap in English. In the small hours of yesterday, unruly protesters yet again vandalized MTR stations, smashing up facilities and paralyzing train services. In one incident, some people even dropped from height a bicycle onto the overhead power lines on a section of track between University and 410 MTR station. Such reckless acts pose a grave danger to public safety. It is a worrying trend that disruptive acts have extended to different transport hubs, including the Hong Kong International Airport. The airport is a key infrastructure that we always take pride in. But we're aware that some of online comments promoting another protest at the airport tomorrow. Some netizens claim that they will so-called stress test the airport, intending to leave the transport system in gridlock. I'm positive that Hong Kong citizens do not wish to see history repeat itself. Back on the 13th of August, the airport was paralyzed 2 days in a row as thousands of protesters flooded into the passenger terminal and staged a sit-in protest. It quickly turned confrontational and violent as protesters unlawfully blocked departure immigration hall and that had prevented passengers from boarding their planes. Worse still, they even took justice in their own hands and harshly attacked some innocent visitors. In particular, a gang of radical protesters surrounded and harshly wounded 2 Chinese visitors. They were beaten up with hands and legs bound with cable ties. What's worse, when paramedics tried to approach the 2 injured visitors, they were blocked by the protesters. Please allow me to remind you all that the airport authority has obtained an injunction order from the court to restrain people from unlawfully and unwillfully obstructing or interfering with the proper use of the airport. Anyone in breach of the order is liable to contempt of court. The police will fully support and provide all necessary assistance to the airport authority in enforcing the injunction order, as well as access control measures. Please also be reminded that the injunction order also covers the roads connecting to the airport. I would like to draw your attention to the offences related to irresponsible acts on the road. If drivers intentionally drive slowly to obstruct traffic, they may be liable to careless driving and dangerous driving under the Road Traffic Ordinance. The maximum penalty for careless driving is 6 months imprisonment and a fine of $5,000. And for dangerous driving, 3-year imprisonment and a fine of $25,000. Right now, Bona fide travelers have to show their boarding pass in order to enter the terminals. It has also come to our attention that certain netizens talk about making fake e-ticket to disguise as a passenger in order to gain entry into the passenger terminal building. We must stress that such as constitute the offence of using a false instrument. The maximum penalty is 14 years imprisonment. Now I will move to talk about a police order event proposed to be held in Central this Sunday. The police was just notified by the organizer of the intention to hold a public procession starting from the Charter Garden and ending at Noah Albert Road in Sunday afternoon. We will maintain close liaison with the organizer and conduct a risk assessment before considering whether to issue a letter of no objection. We will also make respective deployment to ensure public order and safety. In conclusion, the airport is an essential infrastructure catering to travelers from all around the world. Since an injunction is enforced, anyone unlawfully and willfully interfering with its proper use is liable to contempt of court. The police will closely monitor the situation and make respective deployment tomorrow. We appeal to public to stay tuned to the latest traffic arrangement as well as information from the airport and airliners. They should budget sufficient traveling time before making their way to the airport. Thank you.
嚟緊落嚟會到我哋嘅問答時間嘅。
Next, we are going to have a Q&A session. Now TV. On the 1st of September at the airport, at that time, there were a large number of police officers on standby at different ferry piers and stop people boarding, like the central ferry piers. It's far away from the protest activities on Tung Chung. Why was it so? And did you make any arrests? Can you give us the numbers? If no one was arrested, would you regard this as being very intrusive? And are you going to do something similar in the coming weekend? And then again, another question about the 1st of September, a police officer went inside a female toilet shouting at 3 teenage girls. One of them had got a boarding pass, and I would like to know why did he do it and on what basis? Any intelligence? And for a male police officer to go inside a female toilet, did he violate any guidelines? Any apologies to be given? Any apology to be given? On the 31st of August, a person who had been subdued had articles not belonging to him being put into his hands. I want to know whether this is against the police guidelines, and is there any guideline to say what you can do about the exhibits on the site? Why is it that articles have been moved around and trying to make it appear that they belong to someone who wasn't the owner? Well, first of all, as to whether in the coming weekend, whether we are going to deploy officers at the ferry piers nearby. We will respond to the actual situation. On the 1st of September, I think the media as well as the public could see on the TV screen that radical protesters, or I call them the rioters, they broke the law and then they took the ferry trying to flee the airport. So we believe that for a particular ferry service, the ferry might have carried people who have taken part in the unlawful event, and that's why we deployed our officers at the ferry pier. We did not make any arrests on that day. We merely registered the personal data of those getting off the ferry. And there was some search, but we do not rule out that there would be some follow action as a follow-up action, and there might be arrests. As to the second question, I defer to Mr. Lau. Sorry, speaker is off mic. You checked everybody, but it appears that you haven't got sufficient evidence. Would you regard this as causing nuisance to the public? I think the citizens of Hong Kong have a certain duty to help the police to maintain law and order in Hong Kong. I have mentioned earlier on, and probably you saw it on live broadcast, a large number of people broke the law and they boarded that particular ferry. And that's why we deployed our manpower at the Central Ferry Pier. You asked a second question about the 1st of September. There is 2 female suspects. They were suspected as protesters. Maybe I give you more details. Probably you have only part of the details online. What happened in the beginning was that a number of protesters broke the access control at the airport terminal. The police saw this, and upon request by the airport security staff, we tried to understand what happened. When the police found that there were around about 5 people who were dashing towards a toilet, we tried to go up to understand the details. My understanding is that no male officer went inside a female toilet. On the other hand, there were other airport staff inside the female toilet. They helped the police to take suspects from the toilet to the place outside to help the police. So it isn't a matter of a male police officer going inside a female toilet to deal with a case. Would you like to repeat your third question? At the Prince Edward Station, it was said that some articles were placed next to a person who had been subdued by a police officer, and the articles did not belong to that person. Do you have any guidelines to deal with the exhibits? Did the exhibits belong to that person? Would you arbitrarily move the exhibits around? I would like to thank you for this question. But then for today, we'll be mainly talking about the activities on Sunday and Saturday. You can raise the questions after this briefing or at the press conference later on. We can move on. Well, today we will be interested in the Saturday and Sunday activities. If you have got questions, please follow them up at future press conferences or briefings. I can understand you, but then for the 3 panelists present, they have only information concerning the weekend activities. Well, in fact, there is division of labor within the police force, so today we'll be focusing on Saturday and Sunday activities. If there isn't anything to add, please move on to the next question. Please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. TVB. Yes, I want to ask a question about the weekend events. Last Sunday, there was chaos at the airport. I want to know whether it was a matter of poor operational strategy. Are you going to prepare for the worst for the coming weekend? And in fact, some reporters have said that there was perhaps a misunderstanding, saying that a male officer went inside a female toilet, and then it was said that there was the use of trolleys to obstruct the entrances at the exits. Now, the chaos at the airport spread to Tung Chung Station last weekend. So other than deploying tow vehicles, have you got other plans to prevent the roads from being blocked once again? And then for such assemblies, they may result in vandalism at MTR stations. Have you received requests for help from the MTRCL, that is to step up the security? How can you make sure that citizens don't have to worry that something would happen again like what we saw last weekend?
Perhaps our focus on what we are going to do at the airport tomorrow in response to online messages saying that there would be road blockages and other actions at the airport. Well, I will answer you from that angle. We are aware all the time that there are appeals on the internet saying that we should go and disrupt the operation of the airport, including road blockades and then also blocking people from leaving the terminal building at the airport. We try to understand such intelligence on the internet, and we also do our own risk assessment. And with the stakeholders, including the airport authority, the transport department, and other transport operators, we have been making contingent measures. For the police, anything that can help to restore public order and public safety, we will consider them all, and we are confident and determined that we will be able to take care of any happenings tomorrow. But people threw objects onto the rail tracks. Last week, we did not see any police along the road. How can you prevent such from happening again? I think you understand that we cannot divulge the details of our operation, but as to the events that can take place, we have already taken that into consideration in making our preparations and deployment. Xinhua Agency. Thank you. I'm a reporter from Xinhua. It is reported that in illegal, violent acts, it is said that the violent people attacked first aiders, and it happened that they disguised as reporters. Now, if they are going to block the airport and disrupt the operation of the airport, would you be able to identify such fake reporters and fake first aiders? What can you do? And also, recent illegal acts have used up a lot of resources of the police. Is it that as a result there will be a heightening of our crime rate? And thirdly, the police have been clarifying, but then there are still rumors causing fear. Under Hong Kong laws, do the police have any measures in order to target rumor makers and scaremongers? Well, today's press conference will only allow us to answer the first question. The second one has to do with changes in the crime rate. I don't have any information at hand. On your first question about the first aider or paramedic, it is said that in the news that some people may disguise as these first aiders, so our police action is affected. We are aware of that, and we don't only see people disguising as first aiders affecting our work, but many rally participants have disguised as reporters, so they also have affected our work. I will appeal again to people to abide by the law. Any act that will affect or disrupt the police work is not encouraged. And if you disrupt the work of the police, you are going to affect the safety of life of other people. Thank you. Oriental Daily News. You say you are poised and are ready to respond to the stress test at the airport tomorrow. I'd like to know how many policemen will be deployed at the airport and nearby MTR stations. And some policemen had also boarded a bus to do search and making arrests. And you also checked people at the piers. Would you also be boarding ferries in order to search people? Last week at Tung Chung Station, the police chased away reporters from the platforms. Well, if the police say that they are doing their work, and does it mean that you can already chase away reporters, saying that the reporters may be obstructing police officers in the discharge of their duties? This question has touched upon the details of the operations of the police. I don't think I can tell you our expected manpower level to be deployed tomorrow. You also asked whether we would board public transport in order to intercept people and do investigation. When I answered another question, I said anything that can help us restore public order. And if we can take measures according to the law in order to investigate into criminal offences, we will do that in an appropriate manner. At the Tongcheng station, you asked reporters to leave the scene. Well, I do not have information as to what happened at Tongcheng station on the 1st of September. If we are doing stop and search and dispersal actions, we might ask the reporters to make way for the police to go ahead, and so that the police can check whether there are risk factors. And also, what is more important is to ensure the safety of reporters. I hope you will understand that if the police ask you to give way to the police or even to leave, actually our consideration is also about your own safety. Next question. R3.
Can we start with the bicycle case that you mentioned at the very beginning? Are there any links, any signs showing that they're linked to the protests, the ongoing protests, and also the destruction on other MTR stations? Can you provide us with more details on that? And my second question is that last weekend, some witnesses as well as unconfirmed reports are showing that there's a knife-wielding man in Tongcheng, which is an area under your monitoring as well because of the planned airport protest. So did the police do any investigation with regards to the observations last weekend? And are you doing any preparations for any potential attacks on residents this weekend in Chongqing, by knife-wielding man? Any intelligence on that? And my third question is with regards to your warning that slow driving could some drivers who were driving too slowly could risk being charged with careless driving or even dangerous driving. Is there any, if possible, could you give us any examples on that? On like how would you decide on whether that driver could be conducting careless driving by driving slowly, or is that all arbitrary, up to the decision or judgment of the officers at the scene? Thank you.
Maybe let me first answer the first two questions and leave the third to Alicia. The incident that we mentioned that bicycles were being thrown into the track, the case is now being investigated by a district crime team. So I cannot further comment on that in terms of the motive or the possible association or the reason behind that damage to the railway track. So I hope you understand that we cannot further disclose anything at this moment.
But what about the links? Because it sounds a little bit like it's kind of linked to the other destruction cases of other MTR stations, for example.
Yeah, we will not rule out these possibilities during the investigation. And your second question is about the potential disturbance to be taking place at the Tongcheng area tomorrow. And my response to that will be we have taken note of the incidents on the 1st of September on the potential or the actual disturbance caused at the Tongcheng MTR stations. And we have taken that into consideration in our planning for the operation tomorrow. We will have police officers respond to incidents which cause concern of public safety or public security if that takes place. So we have taken note of that.
I'm referring specifically to attacks by knife-wielding men. Like last weekend, did the police conduct any investigation into that? Any signs, any leads on that? And are you making any preps for this weekend, potentially, any knife attacks, potentially, aside from the protests?
I do not have the information for that case, so I cannot provide further comment on that one. And for this coming Saturday's event, we will take that into consideration. And we will actually, as I've mentioned in Canton's previously, that all measures, deployment that can ensure public safety will be considered and in place.
Regarding the careless driving, basically it's the motorists driving on the road without due care and affect other motorists or road users. that can constitute careless driving. So, for example, if in a highway, for example, in North Lanzhou Highway, the maximum speed limit is 110 km per hour. If somebody is driving a vehicle at a speed like 30 or 40 kilometers per hour, that definitely will cause disruption to other road users. To such, we may, consider to, prosecute the driver for careless driving. So it's all depends on case by case, but that could be one example. Thank you.
好，下一條。
Next, Hong Kong 01. Hong Kong 01. If I may follow up on the question asked in relation to the 1st of September. Yes, the male officer didn't go inside the female toilet, but then actually he was very tense and he was shouting loudly at the two ladies. Eventually, it was found that there was a boarding pass. Did the male officer commit a mistake? And is he going to tender an apology to the female passengers because they were so frightened that they cried? And then for the Trader Garden procession, what are the conditions you are considering? And are you going to place a ban once again on our freedom to have a procession, to have a march? What about putting a limit on the number of participants? And does it mean that the organizer must have had the experience of organizing a similar event before you will approve them to do so? And then please repeat in Chinese again, that is the use of tow vehicles on the highways of the airport island. Under what circumstances are you going to make an arrest? How would you regard somebody as having committed an offense of dangerous driving or careless driving? Let me first of all answer the question concerning the airport. I think I told you about the details, the context, and if I may follow up, 5 dash into the terminal. Obviously, they weren't passengers. Otherwise, they need not have to do so. And in fact, they had long poles and they gestured to attack police officers. And that's why our colleagues had to go up to stop them. Well, in the course of stop and search or arrest, well, we have to let other citizens know that we were in the course of going after suspects. And at that time, the conversation was conducted at a level louder than usual. We raised our voice. 2 ladies were involved. I hope you will understand that sometimes police officers might be speaking with a raised voice, but then there was a need for it. It doesn't mean that we would like to shout at the citizens. That's not what we meant. And as I have said, it was done in the course of looking for the suspects. And in fact, at that time, the suspects showed some long poles, and it appeared to us that they were trying to attack the police officers. As to the second question, that is about the assembly at Trader Garden, let me give an answer. First of all, I won't agree with you that when we issue a letter of objection, is tantamount to suppressing citizens' right to have freedom of assembly. Well, in fact, we have to carry out a risk assessment, and then we make a decision based on that. In the past week, we have issued letters of no objection, like the class boycott, as well as a general strike on Monday and Tuesday at Tamar Park, as well as the Edinburgh Place. For the coming event on Sunday, a public event will be organized. But I'm sorry, I cannot disclose to you the mechanism for internal use in relation to risk assessment. But of course, general things like number of participants, the venue, whether the space is adequate for that number of participants would be taken into consideration. As it has been pointed out, the organizer only notified us just this afternoon. We have to spend some time to have further communication with the organizer so as to help us in our risk assessment before seeing whether a letter of no objection can be issued. As to careless driving, as I have said, if a motorist is on a highway and if the speed limit, like in the case of North Lantau Expressway, is 110 km per hour. If at that time the motorist deliberately slows his vehicle, affecting other motorists and other road users, we may consider prosecuting him for careless driving. As to the idea of towing away a vehicle, it depends on whether it's a matter of deliberately stopping the vehicle on the road, affecting others. Of course, we will advise him to pull up the car so as to carry out an investigation. If the motorist is not cooperative, we may consider towing away the vehicle. Next, Singtao Daily. I'm from South China Morning Post.
Question about a woman, a resident, was beaten up by the police at Silfong MTR station last Sunday night, and she was just onlooker and she was not a protester. So she said she needed stitches on her head. So and earlier the police said that you use your professional expertise to tell the difference from the residents and protesters. So I'm just wondering, how, for the weekend protests, especially at the airport, and some protesters are saying that they were dressed like ordinary travelers, and they will paralyze the transport links. So can the police identify the residents and also protesters clear enough so you will not hurt the ordinary residents? Yeah. And my second question is about there's an online manifesto who claimed that they have admitted that the person stabbed the police officer in Koi Fong. So I'm wondering if the police is investigating the case. And also the third question is, did the police consider waiver the privilege and disclose the CCTV footage at the Prince Edward on August 31st? Yeah, thank you.
For your second and third questions, which are related to two incidents in Kwai Fong and Prince Edward, we do not have such information in hand at this moment, so I cannot further comment on that. For the first question, you raised the point that how to distinguish protesters from passengers who are saying that they would dress normally like normal passengers with luggage or even a fake e-boarding pass. Yes, you're right. It's very difficult and it's not easy to distinguish them from the normal passengers. But we will believe that normal passengers will be able to pass through the access control point with their valid passport and also the travel documents, and they will not be lingering or wandering around in the terminal outside the terminal area. So people who stay outside the passenger terminal building or even on other public transport without going into the airport like a normal passenger will be suspected. And this is one of the indications that we will suspect those people as protesters.
Because there's a case happening at MTR station that a passenger, a resident got hurt and beaten up by the police. So at the airport, how do you deal with this? Police force, will you deal with especially cautious? Say when you're facing a group of protesters and also residents or passengers?
We are aware of the possibilities that there may be passengers at the terminal building who will be mixed up with other protesters. So what I just replied earlier is that a normal passenger should be able to gain entry into the passenger terminal building. And in the event that we have to take actions in relation to those protesters outside the passenger terminal building or on the airport island, we will take a look at if there are passengers inside that crowd. And I'm sure that as far as possible, we'll give every warning we could to ask those peaceful protesters and also the possible passengers to leave that area before we actually take further actions.
下一條。
Question. RTHK.
係啊，唔該。
Thank you. I'd like to ask about your deployment at the airport tomorrow. You say that there will be contingency measures. If indeed something will happen just like what happened on the 1st of September, that there would be people gathering outside the terminal building, would you consider using beanbag rounds or plastic bullets or tear gas? What kind of factors will you consider before using those weapons? And also, will you consider asking the MTR to close off stations like the one at the Exhibition Center, the Tung Shung Station, and also the Hong Kong Airport Express stations? And also, last week, some policemen went into Tung Chung Station to disperse protesters and also to do stop and search. I'd like to ask, when you do dispersal actions, can you not promise that you will not chase away the media? Because many things have happened, like at the Prince Edward Station. The members of the public are worried about law enforcement actions taken by the police inside MTR stations. Can you help to alleviate such worries and also protect press freedom by promising that you will not chase away reporters? And then there is a question on slow driving. As a reporter speaking English asked, why is it that slow driving would constitute careless driving? Mr. Lee, can you give us concrete examples to let us know what kind of speed would be considered slow driving and how it would constitute careless driving? Thank you. As to whether chaos could happen at the airport tomorrow, as I was saying, well, you talked about dispersals and using of force, and also requesting certain transport operators to adjust their services in order to complement the actions of the police. As I said, anything that can help the police restore public order and also proper use of the airport, all that will be considered. As for the media, all along, when there are large-scale public events, the police and reporters have always been doing coordination. And as far as police action is not affected, our usual practice is also to facilitate the work of the media. When I answered another question, I mentioned that there might be violent scenes, more of them recently. Now, in order to protect the safety of ourselves and also the safety of reporters on the scene, I will not say that we chase away reporters. I will not use such wording, but rather, I think police officers at the scene will appeal to you to go to a safe place in order to continue with your work. I hope you will also work with the police. On Harcourt Road, you tried to do dispersal while reporters were at the scene. And we could do so. But then at the MTR stations, if you ask the reporters to go away and go to the concourses, it will be different. Well, yes, frankly, stations of the MTR are different from the normal streets because they are more, they have less space. And if many people gather there, there will be obstruction to the police's work, especially when we have to give chase and intercept people. And as to whether you really have to be at the front line of the police before you can work, I think you can give it some consideration, and I hope you will be aware of your own safety. I defer to Mr. Lee. As I was saying, with regard to slow driving, we said that it could constitute careless driving or dangerous driving. Depending on many different factors, the driver's driving attitude is one of the factors. And as I was saying, the speed of the vehicle may be too slow, and if his driving attitude also affects other road users and motorists, that can constitute careless driving and dangerous driving. But it really has to depend on the actual situation on the ground and what evidence we have in order to take our prosecution. Can you not give us details as to what the driving attitude has to be like? Well, I am saying whether this motorist will affect other road users and motorists so that it will constitute careless driving. For example, cutting lanes without proper consideration, like swerving, and if by doing so he affects other motorists, then that can also constitute careless driving. Thank you. Last two journalists to ask questions. Cable TV. Good afternoon. Last week, we saw that the traffic around the airport was seriously disrupted. Will you make special deployment by stepping up deployment this weekend? Will you be deploying more manpower? And also last week, railway services were affected as well. Will you take special measures to safeguard railway services? Will you deploy more people to patrol the railway lines? For example, last week some people walked from Tung Chung to the airport. Does that constitute a breach of the injunction order? If you should see people gathering at Tung Chung or starting to walk to the airport tomorrow, will you consider dispersing those people? I think you are repeating questions on our possible deployment for Saturday. I will directly say that I cannot divulge the details of our deployment. As I said, we have been making contingency plans with stakeholders so that we will do our best to facilitate people going to the airport. These people are the travelers, the staff at the airport, and other users. Of course, we took reference of what happened on the 1st of September, like malicious damages made and also road blockades. Thank you. Last journalist. Economic Times. First, some people are calling people to go to the kiosks on the Chengyi Bridge in order to board public transport. Would that cause a breach of the injunction order? You, in a past event, chased away reporters saying that a scene was a crime scene. I'd like to know how you define a crime scene. And also, from the 21st of June, how much ammunition was used by the police, including plastic bullets, beanbag rounds, and also sponge grenades. And about tear gas that has been expired, will you be using it? Because you said that you would take a review of that kind of ammunition. Have you done your review already? And that is the tear gas that has passed its expiration date. Talking about the kiosks on Chiang Mai, and that is the Chiang Mai Toll Plaza. Now, that has something to do with our deployment and operation plan, so I cannot divulge details. You also asked about the use of the amount of ammunition. We do not have the information. Maybe we can disclose that at an appropriate time in the future. And then again, you talked about the Tung Chung MTR station and saying that it was sealed off as a crime scene. You asked how that was defined and what considerations the police had. Well, it all depends on the actual situation. I can give you an example. If we should find that a group of protesters have dashed into an MTR station and we would not know where they were heading for to do damages, then the area to be sealed off might have to be a little larger so that we could stop and search the people we were looking for. So I cannot really tell you how we define a crime scene. It depends on individual cases and different factors have to be considered. Sorry, the speaker did not come through. As I was saying, if it is regarded as a crime scene, it might involve important evidence that may be at the scene because we would have to preserve the evidence for future investigation and prosecution. I hope you understand our considerations behind the sealing of a scene as a crime scene, because we are talking about future prosecution. Thank you very much. That's the end of the press conference today. Thank you.